Hiya Ben, always great to meet up with you on the range and do some work on your game. Really productive session, and the game's come on a treat really over the past sort of 3 or 4 months over the course of your programme. We did cover quite a few points, we discussed quite a few different things. However, the key points to consider based on the session were, first of all, the location of the centre. What we see here at the start of the session is the upper axis is ahead of the lower axis. So you've moved the weight forward by leaning forward with the upper torso. What we see here with Charlie Wee is a situation where the upper axis is roughly in the centre of his stance, the lower axis is pushed forward an inch or two, and that is how the weight is moved into that lead leg. So you move, if you imagine you were stood straight up talking to someone and you wanted to move the weight into the lead leg, so the right leg in your instance, then you would just slide the hips towards the target a couple of inches. Because of the location of the centres, what we then get is we get a side tilt to the right rather than a slight side tilt to the left. The shoulder line from setup also appears down the line to be slightly open as opposed to being square, which is where we get it later in your session. So touching back on the setup changes, what we see here on the far right of the screen is your change setup, just Charlie, where we now have a little bit of side bend to the left. We also have achieved that by keeping the upper centre roughly in the middle of the stance and pushing the lower centre forward a little bit. And we also discussed how that's going to help you shallow out the angle of attack and continue to hit out at the golf ball, providing you do other things. So good change in regards to the location of your centres at that point. During the time and space of the backswing, we got a little bit long again and a little bit wristy. The thing I said is that if I was going to explain that swing as simply as possible, I would say it was quite a wristy top of the backswing position. Too much wrist. So the feeling, again, going back to lesson 1, was to keep the arms straighter for longer. You see how that controls the amount of wrist cock that you get. You can go a little bit longer than that, you just have to extend the spine a little bit more and free up the hips a touch, but a more controlled radius at the top of the backswing. Weight staying in the lead leg nicely. See how Charlie Wee sort of is in between the two. During the downswing, what we were tending to do here on the top left was release the club and uncock the wrists a little bit too much. Now that we've not cocked the wrist quite as much, we can swing down with less wrist uncocking. Low point is more in line with the golf ball. Handle location is further forward. It's also slightly up, again, which is encouraging you to hit out at the golf ball for longer. One of the things we did talk about is that the hip location at impact is very similar, but the amount of work required to get there has changed a little bit. So you can see the hip slide that's required, the movement that a lot of people find very difficult, is now not as much. You need to maybe slide over about 1.5 inches on the right hand screen, whereas here you've got a hip slide about 5 inches to get into that position where the red line is. So the swing that you don't slide sufficiently is the shot that you're going to cut. Now, despite those changes, and I'm just going to get rid of a few of these lines for you now so we can see a little bit more clearly again. Despite these changes, we were still cutting the golf ball a little bit off to the left. So we needed to look at why that was happening. Now, when we looked at it from down the line, what we were noticing was that at impact, there's quite a lot of rotation through the golf ball, so the hips are quite open and the shoulders are slightly open. and that in turn is causing us to hit across the ball ever so slightly, or put another way, it's limiting our ability to hit out at the golf ball. So what we decided to work on was this drill here, where you're going to draw the trail leg back. You're going to draw the left leg back after taking your normal setup. So you're almost just sat on the big toe of the left foot. What that's going to do is that's going to encourage much more rotation on the way back, but retard the amount of rotation you can create on the way through. And as a result, at the point of impact now, we have much squarer shoulders and slightly less open hips. And if we look at the position of the forearms, we're going to hit out to the left much more with the bottom centre screen than we are with the bottom left screen. So really good alignments and impact there based on the work and the changes that you've made. Your ability now to hit out at the golf ball has improved. So if you want to get that ball turning, in your case left to right through the air, hitting some draw shots, then nice drill for you on the bottom centre of your screen. Having said that, if you look at the top right of the screen, by keeping the arms straighter, there's less flexing of the elbows, and we're hitting out at the ball in a more appropriate manner anyhow, but just a little bit too open with the hips at impact, not enough hip slide, a little bit too much rotation. So great session, good luck with it, and look forward to charting your progress and hearing from you in a week or so's time. Well done.